Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, beautiful, just gorgeous day. Couldn't ask for better weather here on Texas Tech campus. How are you today, man?
Yeah, good. Sunshine helps. It's sure doesn't feel like the middle of January, I tell you that. Very, very nice.
It really doesn't. It's not even, it's almost always windy, here in West Texas, and it's just not. I mean, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's beautiful. It would be a really good time to have recruits on campus, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sure.
First question comes from Murdo Coalition, who wants to know, which is a great handle, by the way. With Corporu questionable, Beard's bench starts looking pretty thin. He said last year it seemed like he had 4 or 5 guys he felt comfortable coming off the bench. He says after Francis and Edwards, and then, when Corporu comes back after him, who does Beard put in the game next in crunch time? Especially if they start to foul out like they did, the fouls mount up like they did in Morgantown.
Yeah, well, I think we got part of an answer last night. Kayvon Moore came into the game, played only 2 minutes, and you figure that those minutes are just going to gradually increase over time. I mean, you don't throw the guy into the game, burn that ship. If you're not planning on playing him for the rest of the season, that makes no sense whatsoever. No. You're playing him because you expect him to help for the rest of the season.
Down for the rest of the future.
Exactly. So you're going to see more on down the line. And as far as, anybody else, at this point, it just really doesn't look like Ondigo or Mbala are really or the walk-ons. Avery Benson seems to be the top of that bunch in Beard's estimation right now, but I just don't see them in this brutal conference getting on the floor too much. Yeah,
not on a consistent basis anyways. I know Kayvon is a guy that's been talked about a lot, but can you kind of give the peeps out there or people the lowdown on what Kayvon brings to the team? Once he gets acclimated and everything.
Sure. He's an extremely skilled player is what he is. I mean, a very polished player, a guy who is very comfortable handling the ball. He's 6'8", but he's got a little bit of a guard game to him. Yeah. I mean, he's really potentially a classic point forward sort of a player who's really good in transition, which Tech is not necessarily a fast break kind of a team, but when they do get into that flowing situation, which they did actually last night against Iowa State he's a guy that can really help you out in that sort of a game. But ultimately, I think he can really, really help you out on the offensive end in a lot of ways, just once he gets acclimated and becomes comfortable.
All right, we have a recruiting question. I think this is a really good one from JB Texas Tech Red Raider, who's becoming a regular here on the mailbag. He says he knows it's early, but as far as recruiting goes, is there a difference from the new and old coaching staff? He's talking about led by Coach Wells as opposed to the one under Kingsbury. Yeah, there are, at least initially, and it is early, which you prefaced the question with, but so far there are a couple of, I think, key things to point out. One, they're obviously not just recruiting regionally. I mean, towards the last couple recruiting cycles, I mean, Kingsbury and his staff, they recruited basically Texas, a little bit of Oklahoma, and that was more just some relationships they had, some of the guys on the staff like Zach Spavula had, but really just stayed in Texas. And now, you're seeing offers from all over. I think you're seeing these guys kind of spread their wings a little bit. I think the new staff just wants to get a gauge for, I said this on the board, like what kind of juice they have at a Power 5 school. Some of these assistants are coming, like Kerry Cooks is coming from, he's been in Notre Dame and Oklahoma over the last decade. So that's a difference in tradition and how you recruit. But a lot of these other guys are coming from either like Memphis or obviously Utah State. So they're kind of just flexing, seeing what kind of juice they have. And they're definitely, you're seeing a lot in Florida. You're seeing some in Oklahoma because they have a lot of connections to Oklahoma. A lot of the staff is from there. But then also some Arizona, at least a couple of California that they're checking in on. So that's something that really Kingsbury area hasn't done in a long time. Another thing is social media. Coach Wells is huge on social media. He tweets at least 1 or 2 kind of poignant statements just to kind of get Texas Tech out there. Like I believe on Wednesday he said, it's a privilege and an honor to work at or play for or coach at Texas Tech, and tweeted out the Texas Tech practice field. That may seem like a small thing, but the teenagers today, they like seeing that. They like seeing that stuff. And early returns from recruits that I've interviewed, they like the presence, the social media presence from Coach Wells. And we just didn't see that. I mean, there were a couple of years when Kingsbury was here that he only tweeted a handful of times at most. And it was usually like if he was at the Mayweather fight or at the Derby with Wes, you know, doing something like that, which is cool. I mean, that counts for something too. The players like seeing that, but it's also better to get that Double T brand out there than anything else. You're also seeing Coach Wells go to a lot of the organizations, which he should, especially introducing himself in Texas. the Texas High School Coaches Association. They also hosted local Texas High School Coaches Association at Texas Tech, opened up their facilities, which is, I don't remember that ever happening, you know, under Kingsbury. I'm not saying he didn't do those things. I don't remember that happening. I don't. And this isn't Wells tweeting that stuff out. It's the other coaches tweeting out their thanks to Wells, and by all accounts was really well received. I mean, I think they're checking all the boxes there as far as getting out there, the whole CEO of recruiting and make no mistake, you asked about recruiting, and I'm talking about him talking with coaches, and that's huge. I think people will focus on the players, but establishing a relationship with coaches, you could argue, is just as big as it is with the recruits themselves. So I really like what they're doing in those two regards. Also, finally, and this is a big one, you know, defensively under Coach Gibbs, and you know, there were some results with him doing this, positive and negative, but he had the kind of you have to see him in person, self-evaluation or in-person evaluation before offering on defense for 99% of their offers. And honestly, a lot of times, if you're Oklahoma or Notre Dame, just to throw two programs out there, I think you can get away with that some. Texas Tech doesn't have that kind of tradition, you know. They're just not on that level as far as tradition in college football. So you have to be one of the first ones to offer on some of these big-time guys and have that built-in loyalty. And Texas Tech just didn't do that under David Gibbs. You're seeing that now. I mean, they're offering 2020, and they're looking at 2021 guys. I mean, they're ahead of the curve as far as getting offers out there. They're not waiting to travel to see all these guys in person, though they are traveling during the open period, meeting with a lot of guys. So I like what I'm seeing so far from recruiting. It's all about the end results, though, so we'll see about that coming up. Texas Tech Austin wants us to name the movie that best represents this year's basketball team. I said Commando, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is just blowing everybody away. But what do you think? With what movie best describes the Red Raiders basketball team this year?
Yeah, you know, I really struggle with this, racked what brains I have trying to come up with something. And you know what I came up with? It was a little bit different from what you came up with. The Fountainhead. All right, have you heard of this? Ayn Rand, yeah. With Gary Cooper in it.
That's one of the best monologues ever at the end when Cooper goes off about his property being his. Actually, it's one of my favorite scenes in any book and movie. Right.
Well, you know, it's what that movie is about. A lot of it is just kind of, it's like the individual blazing his own path, doing his own thing against what everybody else is doing, defying convention, yes, so forth and so on. And it just strikes me that Texas Tech's program just kind of does things their own way. It's kind of an unorthodox program, and to some extent, it's the way they play the game. I mean, with their incredible defensive focus and orientation, which is, you know, there's some other teams out there, Michigan, Kansas State, Virginia, that do that. But for the most part, it's a little bit of an unusual approach, and just kind of the way they do things off the court too, with Beard and his fireside chats and these, just a lot of stuff that you don't see going on necessarily at a lot of other places. And so Tech is just kind of a different kind of a program. And they just do it their way, and it's like, you know, with the old Frank Sinatra song, I did it my way. Well, this team does it their way, and so that's kind of what I came up with.
Red Raiders wants to know, what do we think the new football staff will make the priority every year? Is it going to be specifically offense, defense, or both, or what do you think? And I'm not sure if he meant recruiting or if he meant coaching or all the above or what, but what do you think, Joe? Let's just say all the above.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would certainly hope that it's equal, you know, that you're not focused on becoming a great offense or a great defense or great on special teams. You want to be great everywhere, because you're not winning championships if you're not good on all three sides of the football. And, you know, I think you could argue that from Leach on through Kingsbury, there was a little bit of a tendency to privilege the offense at the expense some other stuff. And, I think Leach learned from that and is doing a better job in that regard at Washington State. And I think maybe towards the end, Kingsbury was getting, he tried, but it was a little bit too late. So my hope and my expectation really is that Coach Wells doesn't go down that route. He understands you just got to be a solid football team in all facets of the game if you want to really achieve and reach your goals. So I think that's going to happen.
It's an offensive game now, though, to be honest. And I think what Wells has preached, though, or at least expressed since he's been here, is balance. Both balance on offense, balance on defense. They made a huge investment in Joe Lorig. His contract was pretty significant. It was one of the most well-compensated assistant coaches on staff. I believe it's like $400,000 a year, which is very competitive to bring in special teams. So not just offense and defense, but I do believe that they want balance, and that's something that Kirby Hocutt has said that he really wanted, and that was huge for him when he was doing the coaching search. And I think that's a big reason why Matt Wells is here. And so I'm not saying the defense is going to be as good as the offense, because it doesn't happen overnight, but I think that is going to be the goal. And I don't think it's going to be as much, offense versus defense. There was such a dividing line at one point in Kingsbury. I can't speak to Leach because I wasn't here covering it, but there was at one point. And like you said, they tried to fix it toward the end, but, we saw the results. Yeah. All right, final question is from Tech Freak, who wants to know. He says, look, he knows it's early, but what is our rapport like with the new coaching staff? Yeah, it is very early. It takes time to establish relationships. When I interviewed Coach Wells one-on-one, he was like, he didn't know basically who I was. And I wasn't offended by that at all, of course. He's going a million miles an hour. One of the SIDs told me that when he was helping Coach Wells kind of with his phone calls and schedules and everything, he noticed he had like over 400 missed texts that he hadn't looked at yet. So and that gives you just a small idea of what this man's life has been like. Now he's just started this spring tour where he's going crisscrossing the state, and he's recruiting. He put his staff together. There's a good rapport being built, starting to be built, to where it's gonna lend dividends. I really like this staff. I'm looking forward to working with him. I think everybody's gonna be happy with how open the program is gonna be. But we'll just have to see. We've got spring ball coming up. I think that will be a big barometer. But I think everyone's going to be happy. I think everyone's going to be happy with the scoop we get. That's the nicest way to say it, the best way to say it. And I'm really just excited to get it going at this point. There's been a lot of talk about recruiting and putting the staff together. I want to see my biggest thing I get out of is actually seeing the game, the sport. Even just practice them, what the X's and O's of it, who's the competition. That's really what I got into this for. All the other stuff is so I can get a front row seat for it. You know what I mean? So, I'm looking forward to seeing what this team looks like in spring, and then obviously fall camp, and then we'll see with the first season. So I think the rapport will just get stronger and stronger, Joe. All right, Joe, that ought to do it, man. Great stuff from you as always. Great questions from y'all, and until next time.